Progressive Business Executive Education would like to welcome you to today's webinar, Google Analytics Workshop and Live Demo, Detailed Reporting for Marketers. My name is Andrea and I will be your moderator for today's program. Today's event is 90 minutes in length. There will be a 75-minute presentation followed by a 15-minute question and answer session. The entire program is being recorded and can be purchased at an attendee discount. If you have any questions during the event, you can communicate with me through the chat box in the bottom left corner of your screen. We ask that if you lose the stream or have audio issues throughout this event, to please select the red X in the upper right corner and then refresh the interface. The materials packet can be found within the Documents portion of this window and includes a copy of the instructor's presentation. Please remember that it is a violation of our copyright to record the training. Now I would like to introduce your speaker, Tina Arnoldi. Tina, can you click the allow button for your microphone? Tina?
Yes, is everyone getting sound now?
I can hear you now.
Okay. Okay, great. Andrew, I'll assume everyone else, if you can hear me okay, if you wouldn't mind just putting an okay there in the chat box, just so I know. Let's see. Not seeing any chat for the attendees. If everyone would just say okay, just so I know that you can hear me. Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. Okay, I didn't want to go into my spiel again if we were still having issues there. So thank you for coming to today's webinar on Google Analytics. One thing I want to note with the software we're using today, we're all on different computer resolutions. So if you're having trouble viewing the whole screen, there is an option towards the top middle of it where you can either go full screen, and that's kind of a gray box. If you go full screen, you won't be able to see the chat box. If instead there's a square that's kind of orange square that will fit to the screen, and that way you'll be able to see my full screen and be able to chat at the same time, which would be helpful because I like to ask a lot of questions while I'm training just to make sure everybody's doing okay and kind of get a read on the room. So my role, what I do for work, is work with people with their analytics accounts and their AdWords accounts, and I get the Google certifications, and even though I'm in these products all the time, I still have days when I log in and think, what did they just change something again? So I know it's very hard on everybody else who does not do this regularly, that it's a lot of information to keep up with. So here's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to talk about using dashboards, because we're kind of focusing on reporting, and dashboards are a great way to just get your data at a glance. We'll talk about advanced segments and just segments in general and how you can use them to get rid of your spam. Make sure that you will use, if you're in analytics quite a bit, you're probably familiar with secondary dimensions, but I'll go over those with you as well too. Event tracking is more of an advanced concept that you would be a coder or maybe work with your web developer, but I want to at least introduce that to you because then you can learn how to track some things that maybe aren't naturally tracked in analytics. And then again, we'll kind of apply this, talk about spam, how you get rid of it with segments and with filters as well. So before I go on, I'd like to just get a read of the people that are attending today. And even though you don't see my chat box on the screen, I am just looking for questions throughout. So if everyone wouldn't mind sharing if they would say they're a beginner, an intermediate, or an advanced user, or kind of where you consider yourself in there, that'll be helpful. And then I'll just go ahead and keep going here. So I'll give you a minute to respond to that while I go to the next screen. So just if you're beginner, intermediate, or advanced. Okay, so we've got a beginner, okay. Some advanced, okay, so we've got quite a range. Okay, great, thanks for the responses, that helps me know. What I will say, so for the advanced users, Some of these things you might be familiar with, but hopefully I can give you some more examples that you haven't seen before. And then for the people that are more beginner, or I see people here beginner to intermediate, I always tell people don't, think you have to go out and apply all of these things immediately. If it still lets you know what's available in Google Analytics for when you are ready to get there, with the work that you're doing. So thanks for the responses. This is great. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is walk you through the dashboards. So what I'm doing here is through the presentation, I'm just showing you screenshots. So when you refer to this later on, refer to the slides that you can remember kind of what we covered. And then I'll be getting in and actually showing you this within an account. But I start with the screenshots just so I can kind of explain this for you. When you go to create a dashboard, you have an option for a totally blank canvas or a starter dashboard. The starter dashboard, I personally have not found very helpful. I think it's a lot of numbers on there that I don't necessarily need to monitor, and we can look at that. What I do is I will either use a blank canvas or import it from a gallery. So now with a blank canvas, it's literally just what it says there, that you have this just a blank screen where you can put a number of tables and charts on there, or you can import it from the solutions gallery, which is extremely helpful. And so I'm going to take you through that too. So the solutions gallery, so what this is this has been around for a while. It's not anything new, but a lot of people who are newer to Google Analytics have not been aware of this as an option. So because it's really hard to know exactly what data to pull from your reports. So this dashboard is created by other users is helpful. It's user generated. So other users submit reports from their own accounts. So you can either do this by coming to the solutions gallery, or you can do it within your Google Analytics account. So when you are in here, and to find it, if you just do a Google search on Analytics Solutions Gallery, you'll be able to find it, of course. But when you're in here, you can choose the type of data that you want to see, or if the category, if you want to look at a dashboard versus a segment. Right now we'll be talking about dashboards. You can come in here and you can look at the ones that are popular reports. So you'll see from these examples, some of them, there's quite a few stars for these. So users are saying that this report has been helpful to me. So for some of them, you might want to modify them, and I'll show you that, how you can edit some of the information that you might want to view. But this at least gets you started rather than having to try to create something from scratch. So you can do a search for these. So in this one example, this is one I like, is a referral traffic dashboard. So you can just pull this in as an example, and you'll see information about referrals from mobile devices, maybe the specific city, landing page, maybe look at goal completions. So you pull this in, and then you can decide if you like it as is, or if you want to make modifications to it or not. So when you go to import it, and again, I'm going to show you this in an account shortly, you start to import it, and assuming that you're logged into Google Analytics, you're going to see a list of all of your accounts. Now, if you're doing this for one business, you may just have the one account, but what this will show you is this is a drop-down menu where you would just go ahead and say the account you want to apply this to. If the dashboard is named well, and I think most of them are, you can just keep the name of Referral Traffic Dashboard. And then once you create, this then becomes part of your account. And here's a sample, and again, we are going to get into an actual account, but just as a screenshot, when you look at this, you can decide what data is helpful for you. So I think one thing is still helpful to look at is with mobile use, that obviously the number of visits from a mobile device are only increasing, and you want to make sure your mobile users have a good experience on your website like your desktop users. So you might look at your mobile use and look at the bounce rate for that. This report, one of the things this pulls on is you see this bottom left, it's got this visits chart. That's one that I personally didn't find very helpful. I guess if you want to look for spikes and you prefer that visual piece, you might want to keep that. But what I'm showing you here is when you see something, you pull it in from this solutions gallery. If it's not useful to you, then what you can do is you can just go ahead and X out. Again, we'll walk through these, but you can just exit out and say this particular piece is not helpful. So you have a large dashboard. So if we come back here a second, this is a dashboard and it's got these number of widgets on it. This visits widget is one that I didn't find particularly helpful, so I went ahead and just X'd out, so I removed this from my view because it's not something that I would check regularly. What's nice then is once you pull this into your account, you can see the option on how it was built and then make modifications as needed. So here with a table, so I'm looking at a table, I get one dimension, and this dimension I'm using in this example is the medium, which is about the traffic source, and then you get two numbers or your two metrics. So for these purposes, I'm looking at my sessions, that's a number, and then I'm looking at my bounce rate, of course, is a number. Now with this one, I'm getting a little more detail that I'm saying rather than just looking about the information about the traffic, I only want to look at information about the traffic when the traffic type is a referral. So you see I have the medium, I have my sessions and bounce rate, and then I wanted to filter it to get a little more specific. So where we have our traffic type and then we have the traffic, or excuse me, the traffic medium of referral. Now, as I said, you can pull in these dashboards and look at these individual widgets and make changes accordingly. So what I'm doing is it was showing, this default one was showing the source, and I also, or I'm sorry, the medium, and I also want to see the source and medium. So just to back up a little bit for those of you who are newer to analytics, your source kind of, I say, describes the website that somebody's coming from. So what I'm going to use as an example here, I'm going to say if your source is Google. And then the way I think of it is that your medium describes that traffic a little bit better. So a source could be google.com, and then a medium could be organic Google or paid Google, right? So those organic SEO results, or it could be paid traffic results. And this is what I see in that example. So now I'm not just looking at the medium of a referral, but I also want to see the specific source. So it's letting me know that these are referrals, but this is also the exact website that referred someone over to my website. So that's an introduction to how you might want to use one of the dashboards. So if you're and again, it depends what you want to monitor, but rather than having to constantly click through and looking at all of your data, if you're using a dashboard, you can see the things that are most important to you and to do so at a glance. So a few different options you'll see me walk through is once you have a dashboard created, you're going to see here you have three options of what you can do with it. So if you share an object, what you're doing is you're taking this dashboard and you're saying, I want to share this with other people who are accessing this account with me. So if you have your coworkers that, you're monitoring the same kind of data together, that if you create a dashboard and it shows these key things you want to know, you can share that with your coworkers so they're not having to create it from scratch. The other option is a share template link. So if I were to create a dashboard here today and I shared that with all of you, what I would be doing is I would be sharing the skeletal outline of the report. I wouldn't be sharing any of this data that you see here on the screen. I would just be sharing the kind of the overview of how it was built. And then finally, the last option, which is share in solutions gallery. So if I take this dashboard, I modify it, and I'm happy with the results, and I think other people could benefit from it, then what I would do is I would share it in the solutions gallery the same way that you saw reports that have the option to pull some out. So I can say, I've created this report. I think this is helpful. I want to go ahead and put it in the solutions gallery so other people can access it. Okay, so let me come on over to Google Analytics account. We can walk through some of those. And again, if you haven't changed your screen, if you go to the top, the little kind of orange square there will let you see this all in one screen. So you can see exactly what I'm doing. So I'm here in an analytics account, and this is for somebody. This is a conference happening here. I'm in Charleston, South Carolina. It's happening here next week, Tech Marketing Conference. When I come over here to this left side, and you'll see here this little arrow, this lets you open and close that little sidebar if you need. And it took me a while using Google Analytics before I even realized this was an option, but this will give you a little bit more screen real estate. So if we look at this account and I go into dashboards, actually I'll back up here one step. Let me come and do this new dashboard. And this is where you'll see what I showed you in the screens, that you could do the blank canvas or the starter dashboard. When I click on starter, it just goes ahead and builds out, let me just name it something. So this is not a good name if you're doing dashboards. This is a reminder for myself so I can delete this later on. I'm choosing the starter dashboard and I'm saying create dashboard. And this is the one that I said for me, I didn't find this very helpful. I like to look more at tables or, more so than maybe the charts. So this starter dashboard I didn't think was helpful. So I can come up here and just do delete dashboard. And I say delete. Okay, so now let's go ahead and I'll walk you through a new one. So I'll say new dashboard. And this time I'm going to go ahead and import from the gallery. So I go to do the new dashboard and I click import. And this loads the gallery screen here. Let's see one that I think is a pretty good one. I'll go ahead and pick social media because I think this particular website, I think they've been doing really good with social media for their upcoming conference. So if I choose import, fortunately it's named well. So as you see this come up here, it's going to be named the social media dashboard. And since I have a number of different accounts, I'm going to go ahead and just choose this particular one that I want to use. This is for the conference next week. And let's see, is it going to let me choose that? Yes, okay. So I'll go ahead and I'll do create. Saying success. Now we're going to go ahead and take a look at this one. So again, this dashboard I pulled in from, somebody else using it. There's some metrics that aren't here because there just wasn't, certain things that maybe this user wasn't doing. Let's see, here's an example. So this is a good one to know, that these are the social channels that are bringing people to the site. We can look at sessions, bounce rate, number of different things. I'm going to come up here, and as I showed you in the slides, it can say this one is not meaningful to me. I can go ahead and just delete that. And then I can also change some things in here. So let's look at this one. This one, read an article. I do the pencil icon, which indicates that I want to go ahead and edit what's here. Okay, so this one, I probably would rename this. I'm not sure how meaningful that is, but I'm saying I only want to do this if it's a social network. They have sessions, and then instead of this goal rate, I'm going to just go ahead and change that to users. Okay, so then I would maybe name this let's see, make this a little smaller so I can edit. Oh, apologize, I meant to do that as users. Okay, and I'll make my screen a little bit bigger again now that you can see that. Okay, so once I finish this, and let's just pretend I made some other edits and got this looking the way I wanted, this is where you would see those share objects. So again, here I could share just the dashboard with you and not any of the data that's in there. You can also go to the solutions gallery, from that URL. And then you can just spend a lot of time in here just kind of seeing what else is available. So that's the dashboards, and I think that's going to be a real time saver. One other thing I didn't come back, I meant to show you. You can also email it. So if you have somebody who says, I want to see our social media or some other kind of traffic every week, rather than coming in here every week and creating a new dashboard, you can just go ahead and set this up so it's emailed every week. It's very helpful if you have somebody who wants to view the data, or even if yourself that you're not in here all the time, but you need to see this data. Okay, so let's talk about segments and spam in the solution gallery. And I'll just pose another question in a minute. Or how many of you, are you seeing a whole lot of spam referrals to your website where you look at the referral list and it says something like great SEO or website traffic today? Has anybody seen anything like that? I just want to watch for a minute, see if people are getting that kind of information. Okay, well, I'll show you what that means. I see some mixed responses here, and I know some beginners may not have been in here enough to see this yet. But a spam referral are the ones like, it'll say like SEO traffic now, or some really just junky sites. I'm going to explain how to get rid of that in just a moment. But the first thing I want to do when I talk about using a segment or a filter for your reporting, I want to first just make sure that people, understand the difference between the two. With a segment, you're making changes to your data just for the time period that you're looking at it. You're not doing anything permanent to your data, so you can't break it, and it lets you look at historical information. And I'm going to show you both of these. This is kind of a review for people who've been in there for a bit, and for newcomers, this is good to know too. With filters, you have to be careful because you're permanently changing data. So that's the one where you could exclude something by accident that you didn't mean to, and that data is lost forever. So that's why I really like segments. With a segment, you can create a new one, or like with the other things we've seen, that you can also go ahead and import these from the gallery. And again, just kind of walk you through some screens here, and then we'll get into some specific ones. So this is one, and I'll see if I can pull up an account that's got a bunch of junk in here. But this is a segment that'll let you eliminate some of the spam referrals to your site. Now let's see if I can actually find a profile where there is quite a lot, so you know what I mean by that. The reason this matters is because if you get a lot of spam referrals, it kind of messes up the way you view your data. Now let's see if this one's got quite a few in it. Okay, so I've got some good ones here. Let me go back a little bit. So this website is a little bit lower volume, or, in terms of lower traffic, but let's look specifically at the referrals. Yep, so here's one. You can see this is a spammy site. This one probably is. What's happening is that these sites will refer traffic to you, or look like they're referring traffic to you. So then you'll come and say, oh, I wonder who this is, if this is a good referral source for us. And then you go back to their website, and whether they have affiliate advertising that you visit their website and they get money for being an advertiser, or whether it's a site that's got malware or viruses or something on it. So again, this one, there's not a lot of traffic on this particular site, but sometimes when you look at sites, you'll see that there's a really high number of just junky sites. And again, for the purposes of reporting, you want to be able to exclude that. So you're looking at real data. So your reports are showing people who are actually going to be customers. So here's an example. So you can pull the segment in from the solutions gallery, but then you also can make some changes to it. So in this one that's pulled over, when you look at this source here, these are the kinds of sites that I'm talking about, the CMALT crawler, best SEO. So you're saying, I want to look at my data, but I don't want to look at it with these websites. So that's an option where you can go ahead and exclude that temporarily. So when you're doing reporting, it's for sites that actually have relevant traffic. You can also do host name. What this means is this website is charlestonchristiancounselor.com. So this is just kind of a double check. I'm saying I want to exclude these spam things. I don't want to look at reports with these in here as a referral. And I also want to ensure that my traffic is only real traffic from my website. So it's just kind of a metric to make sure that you're actually reporting on things that are meaningful. So this is a screenshot. This is a good one because this shows you some more junk ones. So you look at this floating share buttons, quality market zone, get free social traffic, right? So these sites want you to go and look at them. And if you look down even further on this screen, you'll see numbers 8, 9, and 10 are also ones. So since this is a fair number, this can kind of mess up traffic. So the point is you want to say, I want to exclude all these sites, and then I want to just look at my real numbers and see what those are. So that's why you would use that. Then what happens now for this is a site, this was a site that had high volume spam traffic. When I pulled in a segment and I said, I want to pull in a segment from the solutions gallery where I can exclude the spam, you'll see that this is removing. So I only have 59% of my traffic is real traffic once I remove the spam. See, so you'll have sites, and I know some of you are not impacted by this, but if you're finding a lot of this in your site, before you do any reporting, you definitely want to apply this segment so you know that your spam traffic is removed and you're only looking at real numbers. And again, here you'll see that this is showing just the sites that are actually real traffic, like real referral sites or Google traffic. That's the kind of stuff you do want to see in your reports. Okay, so I'll come back over here again. Let's go to a site that's got a lot of traffic. Okay, so I'm back here at the conference site. Looks like they've got a lot of kind of junky traffic in there. But what I can do is I can say I want to add a segment. And then like I showed you when we did, you could import a dashboard. When you go ahead and do that in your segments, you just access here on top. I'll just show you again real quick. So I'm in here and I say add a segment. I have the option again to import from the gallery. So I go ahead and import from the gallery and I'll just go ahead and say spam. Okay, so here's one. Before I import it, just one thing to note, these do need to be updated because there's a lot of, you can see this one was updated earlier this month because there's constantly junky referrals that are coming out. So I'll go ahead and I'll say import. While that's importing, you can see again, this is a good name. I don't have to change the name. So now I'm importing a segment. And give this a minute to load. Okay, so now what I have is it's importing, it's saying all of these sources here, and there's usually like a couple hundred of these. That's how bad it is. And I want to just say this is for that conference. And I can go ahead and save. And now what I'm doing is I have this new segment in here that when I'm looking at reports, I can add the segment that I just created. Here we go for today. So I could say take that segment and apply it. And then when I'm applying the segment, then the segment is applied while you're looking at all of your data. So what this segment, again, what it does, it's different than a filter, is it removes the traffic just for the length of the session. So while I'm in here, if I log out and I come back in here again tomorrow, I'm back to looking at all of the data. Okay, so that's the segment, and that's very helpful, or highly recommend it for reporting when you're seeing referral sources like I just showed you. Okay, now again, the screen I showed you when I came in and I chose to import from a gallery, you could also do a new segment. I personally find it very helpful to import something from the gallery, again, because somebody at least has a good, they've got a good start. There are, however, also built-in segments. Let me go ahead and just walk you through these. So whereas I said to do a segment and I said import, instead I could have looked at some options to build my own segment based on things that are of interest to me, whatever my business might be. Okay, so the first thing is the demographics. With demographics, you can look at a user by their age, gender, language, location. So you can, if you're thinking in terms of personas in your marketing reporting, you can look at this and, ask yourself, how do these categories of people respond to your website? Okay, this next option here, technology. Technology is helpful if you have an IT team and they might want to look into data based on maybe the operating system, browsers, screen resolution, and that's actually the screen I have up here on the right. So some questions that you might want to ask there, is the website activity different for people who visit your site, maybe more than 5 times a month versus 1 time a month? Or do they spend a lot of time on your site? Or I'm sorry, thinking in terms of behavior, I'm getting ahead of myself. So the IT team, apologize, still here is what I did want to mention, is this is helpful before maybe they're doing any kind of website redesign. Okay, so that's good information. Behavior, this is then where you're getting into looking if their activity is different for people who are spending a lot of time versus a little time. If you want to know if they spend more time on the site before they convert, so you're looking at their behavior with all these different options in analytics. This one, this date of first visit or first session, I'll tell you a case where I found this was very helpful, is that there was an anomaly on a website. So when I was looking at an analytics account, there was really weird, huge spike in data for a set period of time. So what I did is I isolated their account data for just a few days when the data was unusual, and then I can look at the reports and kind of drill into what's happening. So that's another thing that could be helpful if you're seeing a huge spike like that. So that's how I use data first visit. Of course, there's other uses there too. And then of course, traffic sources, so there is a feature in Google Analytics where you can view, your AdWords data only or your email marketing data only. But if you use this traffic source and segment it, then what you could do, for example, is you could look into everything about your data that was specific for people who arrived from AdWords. So it lets you apply this in your different views of data when you're doing reports. Okay, so those are just some of the options there. And then the advanced one, you've got conditions and sequences. So the advanced conditions, so you can choose something that meets several criteria. So maybe you want to say, I want to look at data for a specific ad we did, and I want to compare it to how many goal completions happened for people who came to the site from that ad. Okay. And then the other advanced option, a sequence, it could be just this, maybe you want to look at people who went to a specific page on your site from a campaign and then look at their site behavior if they came into your site from that way. So there's a lot you can do to really drill into your data and make sure you're looking at it in a way that matters for your business. So again, we'll get into these segments that I showed you. This advanced one is the option for the conditions and the sequences. And I'll just kind of take you over here. So we'll stay in this account. And I come back up here to the top. I'll just get rid of this. Anytime you're at the top of your screen here, you have an option for a segment. So I'll say, let's go ahead and do advanced segment. And new. And so now I am here in the advanced option. So you'll see all these different things that I could choose here on the left. Now let's look at one for conditions. I'm trying to think what kind of data I'll be able to get with this one. Well, I can say, maybe I'll do this. Not getting any traffic from there. Okay, so this is a very small group. Okay, so this one was an easy one for demo because obviously everybody's going to have some traffic from Google. What I'm saying here is if I get traffic from this site or this site, I want to be able to show it. So you can do a number of conditions. You can do or I could come back here and I could say I want to know the source from Google, or I could come back here and I could say I want to know the source from Google and maybe count of sessions greater than 1. So instead of and I'll probably make that an and. Okay, let's try this again. So source is Google and sessions more than 1. Okay. Small time period, small group, but what this is showing you again with advanced is you can say and, you can say or, you can have multiple conditions. And again, this lets you just look at a very, targeted piece of your data. Okay. The next one is secondary dimensions. This is really pretty straightforward, and this is probably maybe a concept more for some of the people who are newer to analytics. But with a secondary dimension, this is a way to very easily drill into some of your data. So when you drill in, when you're viewing your reports or doing your reports in Google Analytics, this is what your primary dimensions are, right? So these are displayed directly above your data, right? So there's a lot of things about your accounts just looking in here. But the secondary dimension, you can get this throughout all of your reports, and you'll see in this drop down, you can drill in and go in just a little bit further. And I will show you this in an account. One thing that I like to use quite a bit is I like to look at my acquisitions. So, with acquisitions, of course, the source and medium, like you can see here. So that's your basic, how did people find my site, found my site type of question. So you get your sessions, bounce rate. And then what I like to do that I'm showing you here is I like to look at that secondary dimension of landing page. So with this is important because the landing pages are the introduction to your website. So when you're reporting, we want to report on how did people get here, because they won't always come through the home page. So what I'm looking at here is I'm looking at the sources that are driving traffic and which pages they drove the traffic to. So, for example, if you're doing a paid campaign, a PPC or CPC campaign, it may seem obvious if you send traffic to a particular page that was designed for that specific campaign. However, what I find here, it's helpful to know the landing pages that are being displayed in organic search results, and how people behave when they come to your site from that way. Some other things that you might want to know when you're in here is looking at information about your site and reporting on where your prospects live. So if from here you chose that secondary dimension of region, you can see the geographic areas that people come from, and viewing those different cities. The reason I like to look at that at a glance is that can help determine if there's a potential new market out there or if you're even receiving traffic from the areas that you are targeting. Another area where I like this is when we get back to CPC here, line 1. If you are running paid ads, to get new business, you might want to then look into your paid ads or your type of traffic by your location. So let's say that, you're advertising nationwide, and as you start drilling in here, you might find, let's say, people from New York and your AdWords campaign are really engaged in your site and they're converting. And then as you're drilling in, you find that maybe your visitors from, say, South Carolina are bouncing, so they're not completing any action. So when you're drilling into that, you can make some more changes to your AdWords campaign based on what you're seeing in analytics. Okay, so let me go ahead and over here and just show that to you in an account. So we'll come back here to acquisition. And so this one, I'm looking at just these buckets of data, that they're direct, organic, email, and maybe I want to see who is coming in. Like meaning if they're a new visitor or if they're a repeat visitor. So when I come in here, let's see, so this is good to know. These are small numbers, but you can see that email is bringing some people back. Organic, seems that they're doing okay in SEO search. So this is just another way, for you that you can just kind of drill in. If you decide you want to look at this a different way, I can just X this out. I'm back at my regular screen, and then maybe I can choose something like region. And you can see which, types of traffic and where these people come from. So again, lots of questions that you can ask when you're doing reports. Do you care about how returning people come to you or how new people come to you? So there's, you can go down a rabbit hole with this. Another thing that might be helpful, just showing you another one. Let's see if I go to audience. Let's take a look at the mobile overview. So this is a very simple report. If you've been in here familiar with, this is just to answer that question, did people use a mobile device to come to my website, right? So a lot of people here are still coming in desktops. And then you could look at, what do they land on? What's that landing page when they're coming in from a device? Let's see if I can get that in here. And the reason you might look at something like this is then you're asking, you're looking at if the bounce rates are higher on some landing pages for mobile users compared to desktop users. What that could mean is that, if the bounce rates are higher, maybe they're not well optimized for mobile users or not mobile friendly, so you can see that there's a lot you can do here just with your secondary dimensions. Another thing that's helpful to know when it comes to reporting is when you're here, you want to just do a simple secondary dimension like that. You can come in and you can send these to people as a report. So this obviously was easy to get to. We just looked at mobile overview and then did a dimension, but then you could just go ahead and email that or send that to somebody. So it's just, another kind of feature that is, I think pretty easy, very helpful. So again, I'm showing you here that we were looking at a couple different dimensions, and then we went ahead and looked at the region specifically. Okay, and I showed you some of those in the account. Okay, this next one, event tracking. I'm just curious, anyone on the call today that's familiar with event tracking, or if you've used it, do you just want to put yes or no? I'll just watch the screen here for a minute while I get a sip of water. No? Okay. Okay. Thank you for the response. It's helpful to know because, again, I know how much of this I need to explain to people. So with event tracking, this is if you want to track something that is not built in with your site. So I will say this is an advanced concept. It would require some coding. Okay, good. I see some people have used that. And for beginners, what this is good to know, this doesn't mean you have to run out and find ways to do this today, but just to know that this feature is here for in the future. If event tracking is set up on your site, when you are on analytics, and I have the screenshot here of that left-hand bar, that you would go to behavior and then you would go to events. If you don't see anything there, it could mean that you don't have event tracking set up, or it could mean too that there's an issue with it. So this is just kind of FYI. If you're new to your account, you can look here and see if you have it or not. So this is with event tracking. Now in analytics, back up here a second, Google Analytics will just naturally record things for you. If somebody spent 2 minutes on the site, went to 4 pages, and really anytime the URL changes is when Google's recording it. So with event tracking, when you're doing this, it's based on something that you want to measure on your website that's not built into Google Analytics. So for example, if I come on your website and I'm on the home page and I click play to play your video, the URL doesn't change, so the web address doesn't change. So Google doesn't know that I did something new on your website. But for you, you might find that somebody clicking on that video is a very important metric for your business, and you want to be able to measure that. So the way I think about event tracking, and again, if this seems like too much, just file this away to know that this is available for your analytics reports. What you're asking yourself, what the user's doing, is that similar to the experience of a new page? So if I'm on your video, excuse me, I'm on your page and I click to play that video, I'm having an experience of something new because I have this video playing, but Google thinks that I'm just still on the page. It doesn't know, right? So if it's whether or not if it's a page or, you know, or just like a download or a play is kind of when you can decide whether or not you want to do event tracking or not, right? So event tracking, think of event tracking could be if you click, play, pause, stop on a video. It could be if you download a PDF, right? So I'm taking some kind of action. That would be event tracking. Virtual page views, which I won't get in here today. A virtual page view, I see that being as most relevant maybe in a shopping cart. So if I'm in your shopping cart and the page web address isn't changing, but it looks like a new page to me as I go through steps 1, 2, 3, that could be a virtual page view. So event tracking, think of that mostly when it comes to videos and downloads. That's where I've seen it be the most helpful. Just again, for you to kind of file away, with event tracking, what you're doing is you are naming a category, an action, and a label. And now this is important if you do use event tracking to make sure you have consistent reporting. Okay, so here's an example. And I'm giving an example of the downloads and playing as events you can track on analytics. So your category, again, it's whatever makes sense to you, but in this example, I'm using guides and videos. So we'll pretend I have a website where I have a number of things that, guides on marketing, different digital topics. You can download those or you can play a video. So those are the two larger categories in this example. And then the action. So what am I doing with that category? Am I playing, pausing, stopping, downloading? So those are different actions. Those are ways people can interact with my website that's not built into Google Analytics. And then finally, the label is what I have kind of for the name of that, well, I guess really what it says is labels it. So are you downloading my social media guide? Did you download the SEO tips guide? Or are you playing the Facebook video, playing the event tracking video? So this is important as you're listening to this, if you're thinking, you know what, there are some things that we can probably track on our website. You want to make sure you do this first so you don't have things named differently, because if you had, especially in the case, we'll give you an example with videos. So if you have a category of videos with a capital V, and then later on you're adding some more events and you have videos with a lowercase v, Google thinks those are two different things because you've got the capital and lowercase, right? Or if you had video versus videos, again, to Google, those are two different things, and that can make your reporting a little awkward later on. I've seen this a lot in accounts where we've had to kind of do some cleanup because of this with the reporting. So again, just kind of for your reference, is the way I think of it is the type of interaction, a video, a guide, a tip sheet, or you could be more specific depending if you've got hundreds of videos, maybe you would want to have training videos and sales videos, right? So think about how you want to report on that. And this is just an example from an account that just shows how they thought about their categories, so it's recording downloads or profiles or, just again, these things that they had it built in and tracking. And again, the action is what somebody is doing with this element of your site. Are they clicking? Are they viewing it? Are they playing? Are they downloading? Right? So think about the action that they have with you. And there's an example. It shows that somebody had on their site where you're recording the play, the forward stuff, the actions that happen with the video. And you can see what's happening here is the example I gave. So in this particular account, when they had view, click, select, it was set up at different times. And at one point it was click with a capital C, and then another time it was click with a lowercase c. So this messed up the reporting a little bit because again, Google thinks that click was two different actions. And again, finally, the labels when you're doing events. And again, there's a whole section on event tracking Google support guides. It is optional, but I recommend using it, whether it's the title of your video or the title of your PDF that somebody's downloading. Okay, and again, back to this, just the review, the category, just categories of how you're thinking about it, the action for your downloads, and then your label, which is the name of the element. So the page views, where you would, so the event tracking more interacting with an element, the virtual page views is that it seems like a new page. I'm on your shopping, I'm doing your 1, 2, 3 steps of the shopping. And even though when I'm checking out, it, the URL doesn't change each checkout step, like when you have a one-page checkout platform, it looks like it's a new page for me, so that would be a virtual page view. So again, just note these. Again, these are advanced concepts. You would have to do some coding, but if you ever have, a meeting where somebody says, I wish we could track X, and you hadn't thought it could be done because it wasn't built into analytics, know that these tracking options are available so you can measure these elements in your reports. And just these examples. So the one I said, if you have the one-page checkout, or if you need to monitor a goal, a flow, you've got these behavior flows in analytics, and you want to be able to track that step, you use this virtual page view. And this is just an example. This screenshot just shows you this is a behavior flow in analytics. It's a report in analytics. I don't use that often because I just really think it's kind of hard to follow. But if you had a reason that you wanted to have something like this, then you would need to have a virtual page view if you wanted to be able to see that in your behavior flow. So I don't do as much really with virtual page views, but the event tracking, very helpful as far as those video plays. And then I get the question a lot, which is better? As I say, it depends. And that's where I kind of come back to this screen. I'm all the way back here. Yeah, so just is it experience of a new page or not? And that's why you just have to decide how you want to measure it. But whatever you decide, make sure that you stick with that, both in how it's being set up and how you name things. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about spam filters yet. And then before we go into the Q&A, I'll come back over and I'll show you event tracking in an account. And we have time, maybe I'll mention a couple other segments that you can do. So with spam, so I showed you the, let's back up. So what I showed you was the segments, right? So the segments, I showed you that you could go to the solutions gallery, you could import a segment, and then you could apply that to your data to exclude spam. Again, this is temporary. It's just a segment is just while you're in an account. But the reason I like a segment better than a filter, well, I like it better for a couple reasons. But one is I can look at my current data and my historical data, right? So if I've had all of this spam coming into my account for months and I just now notice it, I can use a segment and get rid of that while I'm building my reports. And then a segment is per user. So when I create a segment, that's in my Tina Arnoldi Google Analytics account. So anytime I add a new client, I can use a segment in the Tina Arnoldi account and apply that to different clients, right? So you wouldn't have that unless I shared it with you. Now with the filters permanently modify data. So what I've found, I've heard that somebody had set up a filter, and some of you may have done this, where you have a filter where you're excluding traffic from your office IP address, right? So you're just getting your customers, you're not getting your coworkers in the traffic. Well, what happened is somebody had set up their filter to say, how did they do it? They said, I want to exclude everyone except for our office, right? So they said include our office traffic only instead of exclude. So they wrote it backwards, and by the time they caught it, they had unfortunately been only collecting data for their office staff. Now that's a problem because that's permanent. They permanently excluded their website traffic. So you can't fix that. Another thing I don't like is that it's only from new data moving forward. And I'm still going to show you what that looks like, because if you set up a brand new Google Analytics account on a website tomorrow, I think doing a filter to exclude some of the spam traffic is a great idea because you're starting from scratch. You know, you can just get rid of that data. And then this is per profile. So if I go in and I have a filter on each client's account, that's only applied to them. Whereas segments I can reuse for, for any account that I have access to, which is nice when I have a segment that works well, that I can use it when I'm analyzing data for clients. And again, the host name that I showed at the beginning when you were doing that import segment for spam data, that you were able to say, I want to exclude traffic from the spammy sites, and I want to include traffic that goes to my website. Okay, so that's something else, another filter you can include. So we'll show you the, I might come back to that one. I want to just show you a couple things yet when I want to go back to the segments and show you I want to show you the events, and then I can show you the filter. But again, so excluding spam, if you are doing this like I showed you at the beginning with a segment, since spam keeps updating, you do need to update your filter. I'm sorry, I apologize for that. You need to update your segment. If you remember towards the beginning, I showed you where I imported a segment and they had a note on there that it was last updated this month. So this is somebody who's modifying a segment to get rid of spam traffic, and he or she is keeping that updated as these new resources come out. And then I also want to show you this filter. If you note this guy's name, that'll make sense to you in just a minute. So let me go back and do these few things before we've got some time yet, before we go over to our Q&A. So let me come back to this account. Let me just change my view. And I will go back further. Actually, I'm going to go back to last year because I know we had a lot of events from his last year. So what this person was doing is they had things on their website that were not tracked as a built into analytics. So let's look at some of their, make sure he's got some events in here. Go back a little further. Oh, I'll just see. Okay. Well, that's okay. So on this website, I'll just make sure we've got some more good data here. Okay. So on this person's website, when what happened is somebody was clicking on a button. So even though so clicking on the button did take people to a new page, and when people went to a new page, of course Google can recognize that. You know, your web address changes, somebody went to a new page on that website, so Google records that. But what they wanted to know is they want to know if somebody went to a page by clicking on a button. So the category is a button click. So I want to know if they're clicking on a button to get to pages. We just want to know if people are, you know, seeing the buttons or it's calling people's attention. So they have a category here of a button click. What they did is the action is they decided to just name which page it was going to, right? So this tells us that the button click, we had people going to the speakers page, we had some going to register, and some going to about. Now again, this one's a little bit different because you can see this event action is also a page. So Google's recording these pages, but what we want to know is how, you know, how they got there. So that's an example of an event action. If this makes, if you're seeing why you might want to do this, if you just look up, well, there's a few different versions, but we'll just go over to Google support, or if you go to Google developers and you just remember that it's called event tracking. So it's going to show you, it'll walk you through again what this is, data about people interacting with your content, and then, you know, how you can find that data, walks you through some of the examples I gave on how you can name it. So this one's great, category of video, play, and then they have the name of it. So again, this is just the event tracking. It'll walk you through what's a good action, a good label. So I would become familiar with that just so you know the good naming conventions to use. So as if your role is as the marketer, your role would be to, I would strongly suggest that if you do this to have input on how things are named. So when you're in your reports later on, that you can maybe give some guidance to your web or IT team on how to name things so it's going to make sense later on when you put it into a report. Okay, so that's the event tracking. What was the other one I wanted to go back? Oh, the filter. So the name that I showed you here on this slide, this guy this is really great for if you're using a filter, if you want to use a spam filter. He has something that he publicizes that you can import into your account to get rid of your spam. So let me go ahead and show it to you on one account here. Let's see. Okay, so for filters, when you're doing filters, so here I'm still at this conference site, and if I come over here to the right, I can see the filters. And again, this is where I say be careful because this is permanent changes to your account. Well, when I look at this filter, I can see there's probably, yeah, at least 20 something, yeah, 26 spam filters. I'll show you what's in one of these. So this is a spam filter one, and it gets rid of all of these spam referrals from this account. Now, you'll notice this obviously is a lot of work because a filter pattern, I think you can fit like 258 characters in here. So we have somebody who's filtering, you know, has got 250 something characters worth of spam to get rid of, and they have 26 of these filters. So rather than doing that work, what you want to do, if you come to this person's website, this is a free tool that when you come in here to this person's website, this is a free tool that when you come in here and you scroll to the bottom, it's just going to kind of give you some warnings that you do need to have higher level access on analytics. So if you can only view Google Analytics data, you won't be able to do this. You would need to have an administrator do this for you. But when you go ahead and click it, let's see if it'll work for me today or not. There we go. You see it's looking at my accounts. Okay, so it's pulled up all of my accounts. And well, I guess I can go ahead and do this in one here. So look at my account. And I have this particular account, I have a bunch of different profiles, and I have one called Exclude Spam Referrals. I'm going to go ahead and say create and apply filters. So what this did is it looked at Google Analytics for this website, and it's saying, okay, I already found actually a lot of these filters. Let's see if they're all, maybe they've all been updated. Once you do that, it'll say linked successfully, all done. And then what you just did is rather than manually create all of these, you just pulled all of these into your account in order to exclude that spam traffic. Now, a couple things to note. One thing up here, if you look at the top, I said that there's a, quota of how many per day. So know that some days you might come in here, and since this is a public site, a lot of people may have already used up all of the, the installers for the day. So you won't be able to do it. You'd have to come back another day. Another thing I encourage you to do, and let's see if we can go back and see that in my, nope. Another thing to do, and you'll see that I have this here in this account, and the one that I pulled over, that books account where it said exclude spam referrals. I always encourage people with analytics to have one view of their data that doesn't have any kind of filters. So a view of your data, what we're looking at here, a view is kind of a bucket to hold some of your data. So with this one, I have one that's all data, do not add filters. All right, so this is my one bucket that's got all of the data. It's got my internal office traffic. It's got my spam filter or my spam messages. It's just got all that junk in there. And then I have one that I call all website data. And then this is the one that I update when I use these spam filters. So that's just kind of an aside there, is to make sure it's a good idea to have one raw picture of data. So again, with that spam filter, and again, if you want to reference his name, if you need a chance to write it down, I am comfortable recommending this, even though this is a permanent change to your data. I have this really on all of my accounts. I do think this is best used when you have a brand new website that you haven't really had time for that referral spam to hit your site. So I think this is good from the very beginning if you can get this installed. Even if this is installed, or if you've had a site running for such a long time, in that case, you might want to come over to the solutions gallery. And if you need to get rid of that spam, instead work from something like this, that you can go ahead and pull that over. And it's the same kind of thing where it's pulling over all of those, junky websites and removing them from your analytics account so you have good reporting. So I encourage you to do one or both of those to make sure that you have, data that's meaningful when it comes time to report. Okay, so we've got, well, we'll have a couple extra minutes for questions today, but I'm going to go ahead and turn that back over to Andrea for the Q&A, and then I can go through some of your questions for you.
Thank you, Tina. I would now like to take your questions. If you have a question, please type it in the chat box in the bottom left corner of your screen. The first question came over email and asks, if I share a dashboard with my coworkers, are they able to make changes to it?
They can, and let me show you what that looks like. So when I was showing you the dashboards, let's get this into another account where I know there's some. Well, actually, no, we'll just stay here. This is fine. So I have a dashboard here, and this is the account I was showing you, just this demo account for conferences. And if I want to go ahead and share it, let's see, is it going to let me share it? Let me move to another one a minute here. If I go ahead and share it, what's happening is I am sharing it with everyone that I work with. So here, I have all of these that are called private. If I come in and I share it, meaning I share an object, I'm sharing it with everybody who has access to this account. So now when I see shared, these are the reports that everyone can access, and that means that they can change them. So if you have a fear that you're going to do a dashboard and you're going to share it and somebody's going to mess it up, make sure you keep private. Private just means that you are the only one who can see it or access it. So no one else would be able to come in there and make any changes. So again, once you share the object and it's shared up here, then the other users on this account can see it and make changes.
How frequently do you monitor your dashboards, and which ones do you view the most?
Probably the dashboard that I use the most, I don't know if I have, this is kind of a demo account, so I don't have as much in there, but I like to look at my referral traffic. I want to, I just kind of like to see what's coming in, what's legitimate. And what I've been doing, I do this with one of my accounts, is I have this set up that every Monday, I just get an email PDF for a particular account that shows this for the prior 7 days. So some of these accounts I'm in constantly, others I just look at occasionally. So this is one where I do like to have the PDF come to me that I can just glance at. And again, so this one's set up as a weekly dashboard.
Can you clarify the difference between source and medium?
Right. So the source, that would be kind of the primary, how people are coming to you, and then the medium describes that. So examples I like to give are both with Google and with Bing, because Bing has advertising as well. So I mentioned the Google example earlier. So say if Bing, so Bing is a source. So people do still use that search engine even though Google dominates it, but you have Bing is your source that people come to your site from. And then the medium could be the organic, could be the free traffic on Bing, or it could be paid. So Bing is a source, and then the medium that tells me about the source could be either paid or organic for that example.
That was the last question. If you did not have an opportunity to ask your question, please email your question to ahall@pbp.com. That is ahall@pbp.com, and your client relations specialist will be glad to respond. I'll now turn it back to you, Tina, for closing remarks.
Okay, great, thank you. I encourage everyone, regardless of your level, whether you're one of the more advanced users or beginner user, is to spend some time in the solutions gallery looking at the segments and dashboards. I think you'll find it'll make your job a lot easier to do. So I hope that some of that's helpful to you and you have this to refer back to as needed.
Thank you, Tina. Progressive Business Executive Education would like to thank you for attending today's webinar. If you'd like to purchase a recording of this conference, you may do so by calling 800-964-6033 or by using the enclosed order form. We would also like to encourage you to complete and return the evaluation form to us. On behalf of Progressive Business Executive Education, I would like to thank you for attending the webinar. This concludes our program.